What will it mean for USC if
You are Locked On Trojans, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Holkin, and thank you for making Locked On USC, part of the Locked On Network, your first listen every single day. Whether you're watching the show on YouTube, wherever you're downloading your podcast, the show's always free, and I always appreciate your support. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. So, what will it mean if USC loses? That was the question. You're all like, what are you losing what, Mark? So, I told you what the F word means. Around these parts, when we're talking about recruiting, it means fluid. Well, if USC loses multiple regular season games, the F word can mean what you think it means. If USC has a, finger quotes, mediocre season, it can, it can affect what happens when it comes to recruiting, taking visits, staying committed. Everything is fluid until the players send in their letters of intent with their signature on it. One of my everyday viewers, listeners, Dan Berman, raised a really good point. He got done listening to yesterday's episode of Locked On USC, and Dan made the point and said, Mark, if SC goes 7-5 or even worse in 2024, how many of these fluid commits will uncommit? Starting again that vicious cycle of going to the transfer portal. Yeah. That's kind of what Dan's bringing up. That's kind of the reality of where USC is at right now. I know if I was Lincoln Riley, I'd probably start each day looking in the mirror, rubbing the sleep away, getting ready to get that day started, growing and getting better, developing. I'm probably looking in the mirror saying, God, man, you waited a year too long. You stayed loyal to your friend, great trait, but man, that monkey is on my shoulders right now. That's not a dig. It's not. But let's be honest, him retaining Alex Grinch that could end up being Coach Riley's Waterloo moment, so to speak. A poor season could be his, after Lincoln Riley's beat plenty of guys, plenty of teams out there. But, will that champion have kind of finally met his Waterloo, not being able to develop that defensive culture? So what is going to be an acceptable rebuilding year? If that's the way we want to, if that's how you're going to look at it, Dan. And a lot of people, you're not the only one. A lot of people are looking at, what, USC going to the big conference, it's a rebuilding year. They got to replace too many things. Is 9-3 acceptable? 8-4, 7-5? No. Here's how I would put each of the. Doesn't matter what the record is. We don't want another 7-5, but 9-3, 8-4. Let's use that as the baseline. If USC looks like they're getting better on a weekly basis, improving week to week. Let's say they go 9-3. Okay, and they kind of resemble Pete Carroll's first team back in 2001. That team that they lost each game that they lost by a touchdown or less. It was one of the most frustrating seasons to watch as a USC football fan, because you could see they were in the game, but they just could not get over the hump. And each week you say, all right, well, they're getting better. You can see they're improving. When will the wins start? So as long as, let's say USC goes 9-3, but they look like, Pete Carroll's first year, that's going to be okay. That I think people will be willing to accept that. And trust me, I was there for the end of that season when they went to the Las Vegas Bowl. That team was hungover. So yeah, that's why they finished 6-6 rather than 7-5. Yeah, trust me. I was in Vegas. I saw them hangover city for quite a few of those players. So again, it would suck having back-to-back single-digit win seasons, coming off of what happened last year. But I think you would at least feel positive about 2025 and beyond. Right now, USC has the number 3 ranked class in the country. That's great. But to Dan's point, they have to hold on to those guys. And they have to keep stacking more guys like they're doing in the 2025 recruiting class. More of those guys that I talked about on yesterday's episode of Locked On USC, that's what they're trying to stack on. More of those guys, the Justice Terrys, the Isaiah Gibsons. They got those guys. They want to stack on top of that. But because of where, USC, the season they're coming off of last year, they're kind of between that rock and a hard place. Coach Riley and his staff. If USC plays poorly, they're potentially going right back into the transfer portal, trying to convince guys, hey, come to USC. We'll develop you. We'll get you ready. Or, again, is 9-3 going to be enough to show the recruits that are committed that everything is on schedule? Everything's going to be just A-okay. So the concern is, can USC's offensive line and defensive line, can they hold up for the entire season? Are they going to be ready for the rough and tumble physicality of the Big Ten Conference? I get it. I do. Until USC shows that, defense matters in Coach Riley's personal growth and development, the doubters are going to stand around kind of like this, arms folded across their chest. Tell me, prove it. But let's remember, I want to kind of remind everybody, what happened to the Big Ten Conference's, finger quotes, best defense last year, Iowa, when they went up against Tennessee in their bowl game? Iowa could not stop anything. The game was still going on. Tennessee still scoring. Literally, Iowa looked like a JV team playing against one of USC's best teams ever. Actually, we've seen that happen in a bowl game before. Orange Bowl. So my point being is that Coach Riley's offense isn't going to suck all of a sudden. Yeah, he's not going to have Caleb Williams, but he's been able to put together a pretty good offense wherever he's been with whatever type of quarterback he's had. So based on the schedule, to what Dan was asking about, 9-3 is not out of the question at all. Okay, remember, USC opens up versus LSU, Las Vegas. At home, Utah State. At Michigan. At home versus Wisconsin. At Minnesota. At home versus Penn State. At Maryland. At home versus Rutgers. At Washington. At home versus Nebraska. At UCLA. At home versus Notre Dame to close out the season. USC is LSU. LSU is USC. Both are replacing their defensive staffs. Both are returning their bowl game winning quarterbacks. And you know who else needs help with their defensive line on the interior? LSU. Well, they need a little bit less help now that JVR Suggs committed to the Tigers on Wednesday. Does USC have anyone on their roster that's similar to LSU's Harold Perkins? No. But I do think that Lincoln Riley's offensive mind can scheme to go right at him. Use his aggressiveness against him. By the way, speaking of that USC LSU game, I could have swore I saw ESPN's betting line. They were giving USC was giving LSU 6.5 points. Yeah, USC was favored by 6.5. Over under 66.5. Interesting. So no defense in that game, apparently. The next tough game that Dan brought up, Sharon Moore, Michigan. They run the ball. That's what they plan to do. I think Coach Riley's going to probably have a little bit more of a balanced approach to offense. I've said it before. We will know all about Michigan, who they are, what they're all about before USC gets there. Remember, they play Texas first. And USC has that bye week before they go to Ann Arbor. And look, Texas is going to give Michigan all they can handle. They're expected to kind of pick up where they left off last year, which is in the playoffs. And I know that James Franklin likes to run the ball at Penn State. They've got a couple of really good running backs. But the game is in Los Angeles. And Coach Franklin is still inventing ways to lose games. We've seen it happen against USC. The Nittany Lions can coug it just like Wazoo on any given day. And look, the rivalry games between SC and Notre Dame and UCLA, those games are both in Los Angeles. Deshaun Foster is a rookie head coach at UCLA. And look, I'm not saying that USC is going to win each of these games, but it's not like USC is going to Ann Arbor like they're Appalachian State, right? I mean, if Stanford can be a 41-point underdog to USC, then where are we? Where is USC, right? I think they're somewhere between Stanford and Appalachian State, probably above both of those, well above. So I think it's all about perspective. 9 wins, that includes a win against LSU or Michigan. Beat both your rivals. It's all about how did USC look in the games that they lost and who they lost to. So if 9-3 is acceptable, if we're looking at 2024 as a rebuilding year, and 9-3, you know what? That's the low bar. Remember, 10-2 might get you into the playoffs. So it's all about perspective. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win on your own. Right now, new customers, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, the money lines, player prop bets, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Are you watching Fox Sports, ESPN on your TV all day? Feels like everyone's shouting at you? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, you know what? F stands for freshman also. Yeah. The multilingual thing. F stands for a lot of things. Here's what we're going to say about the freshmen. Play them. Make them feel the pain. Make them feel the joy of what it can feel like to be on the field, to get that experience, to learn. And look, with all the swings and misses that USC did in the transfer portal, at this point, the staff really, I think they have no choice. Play the freshmen. Because no one knew was going into the transfer portal. You know what you have out there. You know, they could add a body if they want to. But, you know, the other side of that coin, let's say you add another body, defensive line, a couple of defensive linemen, a couple of offensive linemen. Well, you got to give them some practice reps. And if you know they're coming in that, hey, you know what? Yeah, they're going to be practice guys. Then they're taking practice reps away from the freshmen. Right? So why bring that last call in from the bar? Why bring that home? You have no intention of doing anything with it the next day. Yeah, I know I'm recycling that line, but I like it. Because that's really what it comes down to. USC's they've been at the bar all night. It's the last call, ready to close. See what's left? All the good-looking ones are gone. All the expensive ones are gone. So yeah, again, it's a body. But if that person has zero chance of playing on Saturdays, leave the roster spots open. and go ahead and over recruit the high school players for 2025. Remember, it's an 85-man number that you have to be cognizant of. That recruiting 25 guys per class doesn't matter anymore. So again, if you're playing the freshmen, this actually works out to everyone's advantage. As I said in the first segment, if the recruits are watching the team results on the field, if we're concerned about keeping those commitments committed, and the concern is, well, USC's losing a game here and there. If those same recruits are watching freshmen play, yeah, they're gonna notice. It's gonna make a difference. So yeah, they'll see the games they're losing, but they're also going to say, "Oh man, look! You see how many first and second year players USC had on the field during crucial moments? That matters just as much. Maybe not as much as the NIL bag, but playing time does matter." Like I said, if incoming players see that the freshmen and the sophomores are playing, that's just an added incentive. As long as USC's first five on the offensive line stay healthy, then the freshmen be playing that are backing them up. Some of them are redshirt freshmen. They just need to be ready to come in for a breather, or in case someone gets thrown out of a game, just be ready. You're not gonna have some veteran coming in from the transfer portal to bail you out, to step in front of you, and you shouldn't want that. As long as Elijah Page continues to develop and progress like he has, he'll be just fine at left tackle. Now, I get it. Behind him, we're young. I believe Justin Taumanu right now is his backup. He looks the part, but he's a true freshman. And you already feel a little uneasy going with a second-year player starting a left tackle. I have confidence in him. I think the coaching staff has confidence, but I understand if people are a little concerned out there. The right side tackle, I think Mason Murphy is finally ready to take control. But if he's not, Tobias Raymond, he'll be the next man up. Redshirt freshman. You want to switch to the other side of the ball? Look, USC did not get what they needed. They got Nate Clifton back in December in the early transfer portal. They needed a couple of guys from the spring window. Did not happen. Doesn't look like it's going to happen. Carlon Jones, Ratumana Bulabalavu, you better be ready to strap your helmets on. And I'll tell you what, I'm wondering if USC, this coaching staff, not getting around, sitting around the table thinking, who do we have on our roster that we might be able to flip to the other side of the ball? How about the name Amos Talalele? He might be considering the chance to help out on defense. He played D-line in high school. Playing the freshman isn't a bad thing. I mean, obviously you don't want to play 11 all at one time. Even if they were all 5 stars, you do not want to play 11 freshmen. But if you can sprinkle them in there, sure. But there are guys in this class that are coming in 2024. And the redshirt freshmen from last year. They need to be ready. Strap those chin straps up. Move those shoulder pads around. Get ready. You're going in. It's going to happen at some point during the season. Now, everyone likes to play the blame game, point the finger. Remember, when you point at somebody, you look right now, there's 3 fingers pointing right back at you. So remember that next time you're trying to blame somebody else. What role did you play in the blame game? Here, perfect example. Oh my God. Why isn't USC recruiting so-and-so? Hey, Mark, Why did so-and-so from USC feeder school XYZ leave USC off his official visit list? Why is USC ignoring the Southern California recruits? These are all valid questions. But sometimes it's not USC's fault. Okay? You can pick out, oh, why isn't Lincoln Riley doing this? Hey, how come this coach isn't doing that? How come House of Victory can't do this? Again, sometimes it's not USC's fault. Sometimes it's the recruit. And sometimes it's not the recruit. Sometimes it's the recruit's family member. They're the ones who kind of put the kibosh on, you're not going to USC. Whatever the reason is, they have their reasons. It happens all the time. It really does. Trust me on this. You would be surprised how many times a player came to USC and left for a reason that would literally make you go, really? Today? By the way, I was talking to someone about USC's transfer portal situation, specifically defensive tackle, interior, defensive lineman. By the way, did you notice where JVR Suggs committed? I think I told you up there earlier in the show. Yeah, Brian Kelly sold him on the development side of what else you can do. Had nothing to do with the money, right, Coach Kelly? Right, whatever. Look, Oregon right now, they're straight up overpaying for players. Like I said, sometimes it's not USC's fault. Speaking specifically about the Derek Harmon situation, I got confirmation. He's getting paid north of $1.5 million. North. That means more than. I mean, even Miami said, bye-bye. We're not playing this game. And Miami throws money at anybody, everybody. If Oregon wants to F around and find out what happens to a locker room, continue doing what you're doing. But I completely understand why USC said, no, we're not giving this guy. They wanted him, but they didn't want him at the dollar amount that Oregon paid. USC was in the ballpark at that 1 million plus. When it started going north of 1.5, that was it. USC folded. So again, it's not always about it being USC's fault. Sometimes the recruit doesn't want to come to USC. Sometimes they want to leave the state. Sometimes they have a family member who's just so overbearing. They say, no, you're not going to USC. It happens. Remember, you need your parent or you need a guardian to sign that letter of intent, which has never made any sense to me, but it is what it is. So, I don't know. What else should we talk about? Oh, you know what else isn't going to be USC's fault? Let's say ESPN Game Day doesn't do any of USC's games. I don't think that's going to happen. But don't forget, the Big Ten Conference doesn't have a TV contract with ESPN anymore. It's with Fox, with CBS. So you're thinking, well, how come ESPN doesn't do game day for any of the USC games? It's not their fault. They're taking a big paycheck from Fox. They're taking a big paycheck from CBS. Money matters. A lot of things are out of USC's control sometimes. All right. That's it for this episode of Locked on USC. I'm going to be back again tomorrow. I'm going to have a Friday rant. I'm going to have some other things to talk about, some recruiting. We've talked about the visits. We talked about the transfer portal. We're starting to talk about the team, what to expect. Make sure you check out tomorrow's episode. So until then, everyone, you know what to do.